Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Hangout with your favorite interview buddy. This is the second lesson in the Data Structures and Algorithms Simplified series. In the last lesson, we had a brief introduction into data structures, the different categories of data structures, and also talked about some basic data structures. If you haven't watched that video, please go and watch it. This is lesson 2, and in this lesson, we will talk about arrays and lists, what they are, and how to implement them. In this series, we will be using Python as our programming language. This language was chosen because it is one of the simplest languages out there and is easy to learn and follow through. You can use an online Python compiler, but if you prefer to set up locally, please check out more information online on how to set up your local environment to run Python. Let's start by refreshing our memory on what arrays and lists are. In our last lesson, we defined arrays as a fundamental data structure that allows you to store data of the same type in a contiguous block of memory. You could call the illustration below an array of humans. Arrays are always fixed in size, with each element in the array easily accessible by index starting from 0. We also defined lists as a data structure that can contain a group of elements of the same or different types. Unlike arrays, they are very flexible. Their size can change at runtime. You can append, update, or remove elements from a list efficiently. Now let's learn how to implement and manipulate arrays in Python. Arrays can be implemented in the following ways: by using the inbuilt array module, or the inbuilt list data structure, or third-party libraries like pandas or numpy. Let's start with the inbuilt array module. You can read up on this using the official documentation, but here is the format or the syntax to declare and initialize an array using the inbuilt array module. It typically takes in a type code and an optional initializer. The type code states the type of elements that the array would contain, and the initializer would contain a list of values that should be used to initialize the array. The type code can be any of the following. Please check the official documentation for a complete list and what each type code represents. But in this tutorial, we would be using type code I, which represents a signed integer. The initializer is an optional variable that could be a list, a string, or iterable of the specified type, meaning it must contain values that are of the same type by the type code. So if the type code says signed integer, then the initializer must contain values of signed integers. Now let us implement an array using this module. In Python, if you want to use any module, you have to import it. So let's import array. Now, after importing array, let's try to create a new array using the syntax above. Remember the syntax on how to initialize an array? Let's just paste it here so that we can remember that. This is the syntax. Now let us create a new array called my empty array. It should just be array.array, and we specify a type code. Remember I said that the initializer is an optional variable. Now let's print my empty array. See, it's just an empty array. If we print the length of the array, we expect to see 0. We expect to see 0. See, it's an empty array because we did not initialize it with any variable. Now let's create an array and initialize it with actual variables. So I'm just going to copy this. This time around, we want to call it my initialized array. And let's initialize it with 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try to print this array. Print. And also, let's print the length of the array. You see, there are 4 elements in our array. Now, can you create an array and initialize it with different values of different types? Let's try that and see. My array of different types. Array.array. Let's try to initialize it with different types. A string here and then another integer. Will this work? Let's see. Oh, it failed because an array must contain elements of the same type. As you can see from the error statement, an integer is required, but it got a type string, which is wrong. So let's explore the available methods on the array object type. Here is a list of all methods that you can call on the array object. You could append by adding a new item to the end of the array. You could pop, remove and return an item. You could remove a specific item. You could reverse the array. You could do a lot of things with the array. You can pause the video at this point to read through all the possible methods and what they would do to the array. Now let's explore some of these methods. Now, my initialized array.append 5. What would this give to us? See, now we've added a new element to our array. Let us also try the reverse method on our array. My initialized array.reverse. And now let's print our initialize array. See, now our array has been reversed in descending order. You can play around with more of these operations and see how they work and what you can do with them. Now let's move ahead to the Python's inbuilt list data structure. Now, as explained in our previous lesson, lists are mutable sequences, meaning they can change, they can be modified. Lists are very flexible and they are typically used to store collections of the same items, although lists can contain a collection of different items also. Not recommended, but they can. Now, how do we declare a list? We can use a pair of square brackets or for an empty list, or a pair of square brackets that contain elements in them. List comprehension, which we wouldn't be talking about in this tutorial yet, or we could call the type constructor like we did for the array module. Now let's try to implement lists. So let's implement an empty list. My empty list is this. My initialized list would be this and this. Now let's print my empty lists and print my initialized lists. Let's also try to create a list with different types and see if it works. 1, 2, 3, Python. Now let's try to print this list. You see, everything works. So we can have an empty list, an initialized list, or even a list of different types. It's more flexible than the array object. Now, what are the available methods, or how can we manipulate the list object? Now, the list implements all of the common and mutable sequence operations. For example, you could check if an element is in the list, or you could check if an element is not in the list. You could concatenate two lists by adding them together. You could multiply a list by a number, which is literally adding that list to itself n times. You could access an element by index, just like the array. You could slice a list. You could check the length of the list. You could check the minimum or smallest item in the list, the largest item in the list. You could count the number of occurrences of a specific element in the list. You could also replace items in the list by index. You could delete an item from the list. You could append to the list. You could even clear the whole list. You could also pop. You could remove, and you could reverse the list. Please, you can pause this video to take a detailed look at all the available operations that you can perform on the list object. The list also provides the following additional method, which is sort. This method sorts the list in place using the less than or greater than comparisons between items. Now let us explore some of these operations on our list. I think it's called my initialized list dot append 10, and then let's print our initialized lists that we declared above. See, now we have 10 in our list. Now let's try to pop an item from our list. Pop. Now, if you do not pass any variable into the pop method, it automatically pops the last item. It removes and returns the last item. Please go to the official documentation to read more about this. Now let's print our list. You see, it pops the last item and it returns it. Let's print our list now, and we'll see that 10 is no longer there. You see, this is exactly what happens. Let's try to reverse our list. Print and print it again. Now you see that our list has been reversed. Let's try to sort our list. See, now our list is sorted in ascending order. Please feel free to play around with other possible operations that you could perform on both the array object type and the list object type. Now we have come to the end of today's lesson. Try to practice what you have learned today by answering the following questions. You can also rewatch this lesson as many times as you want till you are able to answer all questions comfortably. Thank you for watching. See you in the next lesson, where we will solve easy LeetCode problems using arrays. Please like this video if you found it useful. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notification so you don't miss out on upcoming tutorials. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye!